Imagine you're at a get-together with family and friends. You guys are all talking, having a good time, and then you hear someone on the other side of the room say, "Oh, I think so-and-so over there plays guitar." So they grab the guitar off the wall, they bring it over, and they put it in your lap. What are you gonna play? Well, if you're confident with a few songs, that can be a good place to start. But there's another skill that you can develop that's gonna impress people even more. And that is the ability to just be able to pick up a guitar and play something, a musical idea that is all your own that you make up on the fly. So in this video, I'm gonna show you how to do just that. So it all starts with knowing a tiny bit of theory. You need to know the relationship between scales, keys, and chords. And I promise it's very, very simple. If we were to take something like the key of C major, a key that you've probably played in before, well, that key of C major, it comes from the C major scale. So a C major scale is a 7-note scale, C, D, E, F, G, A, B. It would sound like this. Now we can get all the chords that are going to sound good together, the chords in this key, right out of that major scale. So all we have to do is give all these notes a number, and then we apply something called the major-minor formula, and that's going to tell us that chords 1, 4, and 5 are major chords, 2, 3, and 6 are minor chords, and then the 7th chord is a diminished chord. And this would make sense because if I actually played these chords, the full chords, as I go through here, you can hear they sound like they all fit together. So C major, now I know all of these chords are connected because they share a key, the key of C major. And what that means is I can use literally any combination of these chords in any order that I want. It doesn't matter, and it's always going to sound good. It's always going to sound musical. You can use any version of these chords you want. If you only know open chords, that's totally fine. Play around with some chord progressions using those open chords. If you do know bar chords, I'd highly recommend using my chord roadmaps. I'm going to give you the quick version right now with one of them. It essentially allows you to play bar chords, so the E and A shape bar chords, by following the scale. And then whenever you want to play in a different key, nothing about this shape will change. You just shift it up and down the fretboard. So what we have to do is we have to find a starting note, so a C note. That's right here on our A string. Now, what we need to do is play the entire C major scale. So what we do is we play that C, and then we go up 2 frets, to a D, up 2 frets, to an E, that's our 3rd note. Now for our 4, 5, 6, and 7, those last few notes in the C major scale, we go down. Like that, and that gives us our chord roadmap. So if we play bar chords based on the major-minor formula with the numbers that told us all the chords we are allowed to play, now, the great thing about using a chord roadmap like this is your pentatonic scale sits right on top of it. So if you're kind of ready to go beyond just playing some chords and you want to play a few notes in between, it's very easy to access. So it sits right on top of the 6th chord in the key. Now, this is important because when we talk about relative major and minor keys, when we're in the key of C major, for example, our relative minor key is the 6th note. So our 6th note in the key of C major, that is an A, and that would give us A minor. That means that the key of C major and the key of A minor are the exact same key. So that means our A minor pentatonic scale shape right here it sits right there, nice in a comfy spot, and works right over any chord progression in the key of C major. So now, depending on your skill level, you can start combining totally random chord progressions using these chords with that pentatonic scale. Now, this isn't easy to do. It'll take a little practice first, but you can imagine what we have now is we have our roadmap that's going to give us all 7 of our chords that all fit together in the key of C major. And we've got at least one scale shape that is going to be tied into this and fit. If you're new to this whole idea and wondering how you can start practicing it, what I'd recommend is writing down a bunch of random chord progressions. So taking those 7 chords that you're allowed to play in the key of C major and just creating random groups of 4. They can be any combination, any order. And then start playing those by applying any random rhythm you want. You can make them slow changes, fast changes. You can do it in 4/4 or 6/8. It doesn't matter. Just come up with something random and start creating these chord progressions. The more that you play these random combinations of chords, these different ones, obviously some are going to sound better, some are going to sound worse, but it's going to start drilling into your brain the connection between all of them. Then once you start feeling confident with these chord progressions, you can maybe start adding a fill here or there from the pentatonic scale, or something else that I like to do is just playing individual notes from the chord roadmap. So those root notes in between my chord changes. So that's going to give you a little bit of a place to start if you do want to go beyond just playing chords. Now, the cool thing about what you just learned is that you can take all that stuff you just learned, move it up the fretboard, and now you're in a totally different key, but the distances between everything and where everything is positioned doesn't change. So for example, if I wanted to move this all into the key of D major instead of C major, well, my roadmap just shifts up 2 frets, and my pentatonic scale that I'm comfy with also just shifts up 2 frets, and all of the chords work the same, right? So I'd still have my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, just like that. And right here on that 6th chord, I'd have my pentatonic scale. Now we only have the simplest form of everything, right? We only really have one version of each chord, and then we only have that one scale position. But if you know more, you can absolutely expand out. You can play different versions of these chords and then play different scales that you know are connected. If you don't, that's totally fine. This is going to be more than enough. So what I want to show you is just how I would approach when I sit down with my guitar and I want to play something cool. What do I do? How do I think about it? Well, what I essentially do is I start with any random chord. I'm not really thinking hard about it. I'm just gonna play a chord, and that's like my jumping off point. So what I do is I play the chord and I think about how that interacts with the key that I'm in. So for example, if I'm in the key of C major, well, maybe the very first chord that I play, my jumping off point, is a C major chord. But it could be any other chord in the key as well, right? I could start on a G major chord, but still be in the key of C, right? It doesn't really matter. It's just my jumping off point. So I have to think about the chord, how it exists in the key, and then that's going to allow me to jump into some other noodly stuff. Now, I have expanded my knowledge of scales so that I can cover the entire fretboard in any key. So for me, I'm not stuck to that one minor pentatonic position. I can play connected scales all over the place. And I think a good place to kind of start expanding when it comes to scales is fleshing that minor pentatonic into a full major / minor, like full 7-note scale. I have a ton of videos on doing this, so if you want to find it, it'll be in reference videos below, and you'll see a lesson on it. But you want to be able to move a little bit horizontally as well, because you're moving horizontally with these chords as you play them. Well, when you're in each of these positions, if you know a little bit beyond that basic position 1, well, you're going to have access to more notes. So for example, we'll go in the key of D major, and I'm going to start on a G chord. So this is the 4 chord of D major. And then I'm just going to start playing notes that I know are from this key, this D major key, and then just landing on random chords whenever. I'm just going to make it up as I go. So it all comes down to the combination of three things. The first one is the theory stuff we learned. So knowing all of the things that are at your disposal and what is all gonna sound good together. The second thing is technique. You're gonna have to actually be able to play all of these things and execute them well. If you don't have your chord changes down, if you can't play bar chords super well, it's best to work on that first before you start dabbling with this stuff. And then the last thing is a really good sense of rhythm. If you can get the hang of all of these things, you're gonna essentially have access to unlimited musical ideas on the fly. And don't forget, this stuff doesn't just work for the keys of C major and D major. You just have to shift this up and down the fretboard and you can play in any key you want. From here, you should definitely go watch my lesson on how to add riffs and licks between your chord changers. It's gonna take a lot of the stuff that you learned today and go into a lot more detail. If you wanna check it out, I'll put it up in the middle of the screen for you. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.